In the flickering light of sacred fires, beneath star-filled skies, human beings have gathered for millennia to perform rituals that would shape the course of history. These weren't mere superstitions or primitive customs. They were sophisticated ceremonies that preserved knowledge, forged political alliances, and transmitted cultural innovations across generations. From the mystery schools of ancient Greece to the astronomical ceremonies of Maya priests, ritual practices served as the hidden engines of human progress, embedding scientific discoveries, philosophical insights, and technological innovations within sacred traditions that ensured their survival through the rise and fall of civilizations today. Archaeologists, anthropologists, and historians are uncovering evidence of how these lost rituals fundamentally altered the trajectory of human development through careful analysis of temple complexes, ceremonial artifacts, and ancient texts. We're beginning to understand that what our ancestors called sacred was often revolutionary. Ritual practices that preserved advanced knowledge, catalyzed social change, and laid the foundations for the world we inhabit today. 5,000 years ago, in the fertile valleys between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the world's first cities were experimenting with a revolutionary concept: the idea that human societies could be organized under divine authority exercised through earthly rulers. The mechanism that made this transformation possible was not military conquest or economic innovation, but ritual. Specifically, the elaborate 11-day ceremony known as the Akati festival, first documented in the reign of Hammurabi around 1750 BCE. The Akati festival represented far more than religious observance. This meticulously choreographed ceremony served as the annual renewal of the king's divine mandate, a complex political theatre that legitimized centralized AU authority through sacred drama. The Akati festival wasn't just about honoring the gods, it was about creating a shared experience that unified diverse populations under a single political structure. The ritual literally performed the idea of kingship into existence each year. The festival's most remarkable aspect was the ritual humiliation and restoration of the king on the 5th day of the ceremony. The high priest would strip the monarch of his royal regalia, slap his face, and force him to kneel before the statue of Marduk, the chief deity of Babylon. The king would then recite a negative confession, denying that he had neglected his duties or harmed his people. This extraordinary moment, perhaps history's first institutionalized accountability mechanism, served multiple functions. It demonstrated that even absolute monarchs were subject to divine judgment, provided a ritualized outlet for popular grievances, and created annual opportunities for political renewal without violent revolution. The psychological impact of this ceremony cannot be overstated. By experiencing symbolic death and rebirth alongside their ruler, the population participated in a shared transformation that reinforced social cohesion while providing a framework for legitimate governance that would influence political structures for millennia. Archaeological evidence from sites like Mari and Babylon reveals how Akati-style ceremonies spread throughout Mesopotamia, carrying with them innovations in administration, lore, and urban planning. The ritual requirements of these festivals necessitated the development of accurate calendars, sophisticated logistics, and standardized measurements, technological advances that emerged from religious necessity but found practical applications in trade, agriculture, and engineering. The festival's influence extended far beyond Mesopotamia. Similar divine kingship rituals appeared in Egypt, where pharaohs underwent comparable renewal ceremonies, and in early Greece, where seasonal festivals celebrating the death and resurrection of vegetation gods may have influenced later mystery religions and philosophical concepts of cyclical time. Most significantly, The Akati festival established a precedent for using ritual to navigate the transition between different forms of social organization by creating sacred space for political transformation. These ceremonies provided alternatives to violent revolution, establishing patterns of legitimate authority transfer that echo in modern democratic institutions, from presidential inaugurations to coronation ceremonies 14 miles northwest of Athens. Along a sacred road lined with statues and monuments, lies one of archaeology's most intriguing sites for nearly 2,000 years. From approximately 1500 BCE to 396 CE, pilgrims traveled this route to participate in rituals so transformative that participants were forbidden, under penalty of death, from revealing what they had experienced. The Eleusinian mysteries, centered on the worship of Demeter, goddess of agriculture, and her daughter Persephone, represented far more than seasonal fertility rites. These elaborate initiation ceremonies attracted the intellectual elite of the ancient world, including philosophers like Plato, Cicero, and Marcus Aurelius, who credited their participation with providing profound insights into the nature of death, rebirth, and human consciousness. The mysteries weren't just religious experiences. They were transformative psychological events that used ritual techniques to induce altered states of consciousness. The philosophical implications of these experiences influenced the development of Western metaphysical thought. The ceremonies unfolded over 9 days each September, beginning with purification rituals at the sea and culminating in the secret rites within the telesterion. This massive hall, capable of accommodating 3,000 initiates, was designed with unique acoustic properties that amplified whispered words and created immersive sound experiences. Recent archaeological investigations have revealed sophisticated engineering within the sanctuary complex. Underground chambers connected by tunnels allowed priests to create dramatic lighting effects and seemingly miraculous appearances. Chemical analysis of residues found in ritual vessels suggests the use of psychoactive substances, possibly ergot-contaminated barley, which could have induced the visionary experiences reported by participants. The intellectual impact of these ceremonies was profound and far-reaching. Plato's theory of forms, the idea that earthly reality reflects eternal, perfect archetypes, shows clear influence from mystery religion. Concepts of higher spiritual realities revealed through initiation. His famous allegory of the cave explicitly uses the metaphor of emerging from darkness into light, a central theme of mystery initiation. The mysteries also pioneered concepts that would become central to later religious and philosophical traditions: the notion of personal salvation through spiritual experience, rather than hereditary privilege or social status, democratized access to religious authority. The ceremony's emphasis on death and rebirth as metaphors for spiritual transformation prefigured similar concepts in Christianity and influenced early church fathers like Clement of Alexandria. Perhaps most significantly, the Eleusinian mysteries established the principle that profound truth could be communicated through symbolic experience rather than rational discourse. This insight influenced the development of allegorical interpretation, symbolic logic, and even modern psychotherapy, which uses metaphor and controlled experience to facilitate psychological transformation. Beneath the streets of ancient Rome, London, and dozens of other cities throughout the Roman Empire, archaeologists have discovered hundreds of small underground chambers that served as temples for one of antiquity's most influential mystery religions, the cult of Mithras, practiced primarily by Roman soldiers and civil servants from the 1st to 4th century CE. Developed ritual practices that would profoundly influence the emerging Christian church and establish precedents for secret societies that persist to this day. The god Mithras, possibly derived from the Persian deity Mithra, was central to a mystery religion that promised salvation through a complex initiation process involving 7 grades of advancement. Each grade required specific ritual ordeals and revealed progressive levels of cosmic knowledge, creating a structured system of religious education that paralleled the hierarchical organization of Roman military and administrative culture. The Mithraic mysteries weren't just about personal salvation. They were about creating a disciplined brotherhood that could maintain loyalty and cohesion across the far-flung Roman Empire. The rituals served as a form of cultural engineering. The central mystery of Mithraism involved the Tauroctony, the scene of Mithras slaying a bull surrounded by various animals and celestial symbols. For centuries, scholars interpreted this as a simple fertility ritual. But recent astronomical analysis has revealed something far more sophisticated. A complex star map that encodes advanced knowledge of celestial mechanics. The positioning of animals and symbols in the Tauroctony corresponds precisely to constellations visible during the spring equinox around 2000 BCE. When the equinoctial point was shifting from Taurus to Aries due to the precession of Earth's axis, this suggests that Mithraic priests possessed sophisticated understanding of astronomical cycles and used their mysteries to transmit this knowledge to initiates. The ritual implications were profound. Initiates weren't just learning about personal salvation. They were being inducted into a cosmic perspective that placed human life within vast astronomical cycles. This knowledge had practical applications for navigation, calendar calculation, and agricultural timing, making Mithraic initiates valuable assets to Roman administrative and military operations. The organizational structure of Mithraism also proved historically significant. The religion's emphasis on hierarchical initiation, secret knowledge, and brotherhood loyalty provided a template for later secret societies. From medieval guilds to Masonic lodges, the ritual techniques developed in Mithraea, including symbolic death and rebirth, progressive revelation of mysteries, and sworn secrecy, established patterns of esoteric organization that influenced European intellectual and political development for centuries. Most importantly, Mithraism's popularity among Roman elites created direct competition with emerging Christianity. The similarities between Mithraic and Christian practices, including ritual meals, salvation through divine sacrifice, an emphasis on moral purification, forced Christian theologians to develop more sophisticated theological arguments and organizational strategies. The conflict between these mystery religions ultimately strengthened both traditions while establishing precedents for religious diversity within imperial political structures in the Rhine forests of Central America. Between 250 and 900 CE, Maya civilization developed one of humanity's most sophisticated understandings of astronomical cycles. Their ability to predict eclipses, track planetary movements, and calculate dates millions of years in the past and future surpassed European astronomical knowledge by centuries. The remarkable discovery of modern archaeology is that this advanced scientific knowledge was preserved and transmitted through ritual practices that seemed to Spanish conquistadors like primitive bloodthirsty ceremonies. Maya bloodletting rituals, performed by rulers and priests using obsidian blades, stingray spines, and ritual lancets, served as the primary mechanism for maintaining and verifying astronomical calculations. The timing of these ceremonies corresponded to specific celestial events, planetary conjunctions, eclipse cycles, and calendar round completions, creating a feedback system that linked ritual practice with empirical observation. The Maya weren't performing bloodletting for supernatural reasons alone. These rituals were calibrated to astronomical events with precision that required continuous observation and mathematical calculation. The ceremonies were essentially scientific protocols disguised as religious practice. Epigraphic analysis of Maya inscriptions reveals the sophisticated mathematics underlying these ritual cycles. Maya priests calculated synodic periods for Venus with accuracy of 9,999%. Predicted lunar eclipses centuries in advance, and coordinated multiple calendar systems that tracked solar years, Venus cycles, and ritual periods simultaneously. The ritual bloodletting provided the disciplined observation schedule necessary to maintain this precision across generations. The architectural evidence supports this interpretation. Maya ceremonial centers like Chichen Itza, Palenque, and Uxmal contain numerous astronomical alignments that would have allowed priest astronomers to track celestial events with extraordinary precision. The Caracol Observatory at Chichen Itza, for example, contains windows specifically positioned to frame Venus at its extreme positions, while the Governor's Palace at Uxmal aligns with Venus's maximum southerly declination. The ritual calendar coordinated these observations through a complex system of interlocking cycles. The 260-day ritual calendar, combined with the 365-day solar year, created a 52-year calendar round that synchronized with Venus observations and eclipse predictions. Bloodletting ceremonies marked critical points in these cycles, ensuring that astronomical knowledge remained linked to lived religious experience rather than abstract mathematical calculation. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed the extent to which Maya ritual practices preserved practical knowledge. Excavations at sites like Dos Pillars and Aguateca have uncovered cache deposits containing astronomical instruments, mathematical calculations, and ritual implements buried together. During political crises, these deposits suggest that Maya priest astronomers understood their role as guardians of technical knowledge that transcended individual kingdoms. The historical impact of these ritual systems extends far beyond astronomical accuracy. Maya mathematical innovations, including positional notation and the concept of zero, emerged from the complex calculations required to coordinate ritual and astronomical cycles. These advances influenced later Mesoamerican civilizations and, through Spanish colonial documents, eventually reached European mathematicians who were struggling with similar computational challenges. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of Maya ritual practice involves their sophisticated use of psychoactive substances to facilitate what they termed a vision serpent experiences. Modern biochemical analysis of residues found in Maya ceremonial vessels has identified numerous psychoactive compounds, including psilocybin, morning glory alkaloids, and toad-derived bufotoxins. These substances weren't used recreationally. They were integral to ritual practices that preserved cultural knowledge and facilitated political decision-making. The Maya use of psychoactive plants was highly ritualized and served specific cultural functions. These weren't random drug experiences. They were carefully controlled procedures designed to access non-ordinary states of consciousness for problem-solving and memory preservation. The most detailed evidence comes from the murals at Bonampak, dating to approximately 790 CE. Which depict court ceremonies involving ritual enemas that delivered psychoactive substances directly into the bloodstream. The precision of these artistic representations suggests that such practices were standard protocol for important political and religious decisions. Ethnobotanical research has revealed the sophisticated pharmacological knowledge underlying these practices. Maya texts describe specific plant combinations designed to produce different types of visionary experiences, some for divination, others for healing, still others for accessing ancestral knowledge. The Popol Vuh, the Maya creation epic, contains detailed descriptions of plant preparations that correspond to actual psychoactive compounds still used by contemporary Maya shamans. The cognitive effects of these substances appear to have enhanced memory consolidation and pattern recognition, crucial abilities for maintaining the complex astronomical, historical, and genealogical knowledge required for Maya political and religious leadership. Neuroscientific research has shown that psychedelic experiences can strengthen connections between brain regions involved in memory formation and creative problem-solving, suggesting that Maya ritual practices may have represented sophisticated cognitive enhancement techniques. Most significantly, these altered state rituals provided mechanisms for cultural continuity during political upheavals when Maya city-states collapsed during the 9th century CE. Much of their scientific and historical knowledge survived in ritual contexts maintained by dispersed communities. Spanish colonial documents record Maya shamans who could still perform calendar calculations and historical recitation centuries after the fall of classical Maya civilization, suggesting that psychoactive rituals served as effective knowledge preservation systems. For nearly 1,000 years, from approximately 500 BCE to 400 CE, the Celtic peoples of Britain, Ireland, and Gaul were guided by a priestly class whose knowledge encompassed lore, medicine, astronomy, and natural philosophy. The Druids, as they were known to Roman observers, maintained one of Europe's most sophisticated intellectual traditions without ever committing their knowledge to writing. Instead, they developed ritual practices that embedded complex information within memorable ceremonies, creating living libraries of cultural knowledge that survived Roman conquest and Christian conversion. Roman writers like Julius Caesar and Pliny the Elder described Druidic education as requiring 20 years of intensive study, during which students memorized vast quantities of poetry, lore, genealogy, and natural lore. This oral tradition wasn't simply a matter of recitation. It involved sophisticated mnemonic techniques that embedded practical knowledge within ritual performances designed to make information both memorable and meaningful. The Druids weren't anti-literacy. They chose orality as a more flexible and secure method of knowledge transmission. Oral traditions could be updated, adapted to local conditions, and protected from enemies in ways that written texts could not. Archaeological evidence reveals the remarkable sophistication of Druidic knowledge systems. Excavations at sites like Gournay-sur-Gironde in France have uncovered ritual deposits containing astronomical instruments, medical tools, and what appear to be teaching materials arranged in patterns that suggest systematic educational practices. The colony calendar, a bronze tablet discovered in France and dating to the 2nd century CE, provides concrete evidence of Druidic mathematical abilities. This complex lunisolar calendar system coordinated multiple cycles with precision comparable to later medieval European calendars, while incorporating ritual periods that preserved agricultural, legal, and ceremonial knowledge within temporal frameworks. Druidic ritual practices appear to have served as sophisticated information storage and retrieval systems. Sacred groves, stone circles, and hilltop enclosures functioned as three-dimensional databases where specific locations, seasonal ceremonies, and astronomical alignments encoded different categories of cultural knowledge. The physical act of performing rituals at these sites provided the contextual cues necessary for accurate memory recall. The most remarkable aspect of Druidic knowledge preservation involves their integration of practical skills with philosophical understanding. Roman sources describe Druids as accomplished surgeons, metallurgists, and engineers who understood their technical abilities within broader cosmological frameworks. They didn't simply know how to perform trepanation. They understood the procedure as part of a larger system connecting human consciousness, seasonal cycles, and celestial movements. The encounter between Celtic Druidism and Christian missionaries, beginning in the 4th century CE, created one of history's most remarkable examples of cultural synthesis rather than simply destroying pagan traditions. Early Celtic Christianity developed innovative strategies for preserving Druidic knowledge within Christian frameworks, creating hybrid ritual practices that maintained ancient wisdom while adapting to new religious contexts. The Celtic Church wasn't interested in wholesale rejection of native traditions. They recognized the value of Druidic knowledge and developed theological frameworks that allowed ancient wisdom to be preserved within Christian interpretation. The evidence for this synthesis appears throughout early Celtic Christian culture. The Book of Kells, created around 800 CE, contains astronomical calculations, mathematical patterns, and artistic motifs that clearly derive from pre-Christian Celtic traditions. The manuscript's elaborate knotwork designs encode geometric principles that correspond to Druidic understanding of natural patterns and sacred proportions. Early Irish monasteries like Glendalough and Clonmacnoise were deliberately located at sites previously sacred to Druids, suggesting conscious efforts to maintain continuity with pre-Christian knowledge systems. Archaeological investigation of these sites has revealed that Christian foundations often preserved and adapted pagan astronomical alignments, calendar systems, and even architectural techniques developed by their predecessors. The preservation of Celtic legal traditions provides perhaps the clearest example of knowledge continuity. The Brehorn Laws, recorded in early medieval Ireland, contain legal principles and social structures that demonstrably derive from pre-Christian Celtic society. These laws reveal sophisticated understanding of environmental management, social organization, and conflict resolution that influenced Irish culture for centuries after Christianization. Most significantly, Celtic Christianity developed educational practices that maintained the Druidic emphasis on memorization, oral tradition, and integration of practical skills with spiritual understanding. Irish monasteries became renowned throughout medieval Europe for their scholarship precisely because they preserved ancient pedagogical techniques within Christian contexts, creating educational systems that influenced European intellectual development throughout the Middle Ages. The ultimate historical impact of this cultural synthesis cannot be overstated. Celtic Christianity provided one of the primary channels through which pre-Christian European knowledge traditions survived the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. Irish monks carried this synthesized wisdom to Britain, France, Germany, and Italy, where it contributed to the Carolingian Renaissance and their eventual recovery of classical learning that made the later European Renaissance possible. For over 3,000 years, from approximately 3,100 to 30 BCE, ancient Egyptian civilization perfected ritual practices that achieved something unprecedented in human history: the systematic preservation of organic material from millennia. Egyptian mummification techniques, embedded within complex religious ceremonies honoring the journey of the deceased through the afterlife, represented sophisticated understanding of chemistry, anatomy, and preservation science that wouldn't be matched by European medicine until the Renaissance. The mummification process, as described in the Edwin Smith Papyrus and other medical texts dating to 1600 BCE, reveals knowledge of human anatomy that surpassed contemporary understanding in other civilizations. Egyptian embalmers understood the functions of major organs, the circulatory system, and the role of different body fluids in decomposition, knowledge that could only have been acquired through systematic dissection and experimentation. Egyptian mummification wasn't just about religious belief, it was applied science of the highest order. The chemical processes, anatomical knowledge, and preservation techniques represent one of humanity's most sophisticated early technological achievements. Recent chemical analysis of mummification materials has revealed the remarkable sophistication of Egyptian preservation chemistry. The process involved complex combinations of natron salt, plant resins, oils, and other substances specifically chosen for their antimicrobial and desiccant properties. Different combinations were used for different organs and body parts, suggesting detailed understanding of how various tissues respond to chemical treatment. The ritual context of mummification served crucial functions in knowledge transmission. The 70-day mummification process provided extended opportunities for medical education, with senior embalmers teaching anatomical knowledge, chemical techniques, and preservation methods to apprentices through hands-on instruction. This created a systematic medical education system that preserved advanced knowledge across generations. Archaeological evidence reveals that mummification practices influenced Egyptian understanding of living anatomy and disease. Medical papyri describe surgical procedures, pharmaceutical preparations, and diagnostic techniques that clearly derive from knowledge gained through mummification practices. Egyptian physicians understood the heart's role in circulation, performed successful brain surgery, and developed pharmaceutical compounds still used in modern medicine. The influence of Egyptian medical knowledge spread throughout the ancient world. Greek physicians like Hippocrates and Galen studied in Egypt and incorporated Egyptian anatomical knowledge into their medical systems. Roman military medicine adopted Egyptian preservation techniques for treating battlefield injuries. The translation of Egyptian medical texts into Arabic during the Islamic Golden Age ensured that this knowledge influenced medieval European medicine and ultimately contributed to the scientific revolution. Beyond their practical medical innovations, Egyptian mummification rituals were embedded within the Osiris mysteries, elaborate religious ceremonies that developed some of humanity's most influential concepts about death, rebirth, and eternal life. These mystery traditions, practiced at temples throughout Egypt but centered at Abydos, created theological and philosophical frameworks that would profoundly influence later religious traditions throughout the Mediterranean world. The Osiris mysteries weren't just about individual salvation. They were sophisticated theological explorations of cosmic cycles, natural renewal, and the relationship between divine and human consciousness. These concepts influenced the development of mystery religions throughout the ancient world. The myth of Osiris, murdered by his brother Seth, dismembered, and restored to life by his wife Isis, provided a narrative framework for understanding death as transformation rather than termination. The ritual reenactment of this myth during mystery initiations created experimental learning opportunities that transmitted complex theological concepts through symbolic participation rather than abstract instruction. Archaeological investigation of Osiris temples has revealed sophisticated architectural designs that supported elaborate ritual performances. Underground chambers at Abydos and other sites contained pools for ritual drowning and resurrection, chambers for symbolic burial, and acoustic systems that created immersive sound experiences during initiation ceremonies. The theological innovations emerging from these rituals proved historically significant. The concept of individual moral judgment after death, central to the Osiris mysteries, influenced Greek philosophical traditions and eventually became fundamental to Christian theology. The Egyptian idea of resurrection through divine intervention provided conceptual foundations for later mystery religions and early Christian doctrine. The intellectual impact extended beyond religious thought. Egyptian concepts of cyclical time, derived from observations of the Nile's annual flood cycle and embedded within Osiris mythology, influenced Greek mathematical understanding of periodicity and proportion. These ideas, transmitted through mystery traditions and philosophical schools, contributed to developments in astronomy, mathematics, and natural philosophy that shaped European intellectual traditions for centuries. Perhaps most significantly, the Egyptian mysteries established precedents for using ritual experience to transmit sophisticated abstract concepts. The idea that profound truths could be communicated through symbolic participation rather than rational discourse influenced the development of allegorical interpretation, esoteric traditions, and even modern educational techniques that emphasize experiential learning over passive instruction. Scattered across continents, from Ireland to India, ancient cultures that had no apparent contact with each other developed remarkably similar ritual practices centered on sacred fire ceremonies. These parallels, first noticed by 18th century scholars, provided crucial evidence for understanding one of history's most significant cultural phenomena. The spread of Indo-European languages and the ritual traditions that preserved them across vast geographical distances. Archaeological evidence from sites spanning from Orkney to the Ganges reveals consistent patterns in fire altar construction, ritual implements, and ceremonial procedures that suggest common origins in prehistoric ritual traditions. The Vedic fire ceremonies described in ancient Indian texts show striking similarities to Celtic fire festivals, Germanic seasonal celebrations, and Italic religious practices, despite being separated by thousands of miles and centuries of independent development. The consistency of fire ritual across Indo-European cultures suggests that these weren't independent innovations. They were preserved traditions that maintained cultural continuity even as populations migrated across continents and adapted to different environments. The linguistic evidence supports this interpretation. Comparative analysis of Indo-European languages reveals shared vocabulary related to fire ceremonies, priestly functions, and ritual procedures that must have originated in common prehistoric traditions. Words for sacred fire, ritual offering, and divine invocation show systematic phonetic correspondences across language families, indicating preservation of ancient ceremonial terminology. The Rig Veda, composed around 1500 BCE in the Indian subcontinent, contains detailed descriptions of fire ceremonies that parallel archaeological evidence from Bronze Age European sites. These texts describe precise procedures for altar construction, fuel selection, and ritual timing that correspond to physical remains found at sites like Newgrange in Ireland and Stonehenge in Britain. The historical significance of these ritual connections cannot be overstated. The shared ceremonial traditions provided cultural frameworks that facilitated communication, trade, and technological exchange across vast distances. Indo-European speaking populations could recognize each other's religious practices, understand each other's social structures, and integrate with each other's communities because they shared fundamental ritual knowledge. Most remarkably, these fire rituals served as vehicles for preserving and transmitting advanced knowledge. Vedic texts describe fire ceremonies that require precise mathematical calculations for altar construction, sophisticated understanding of astronomical cycles for ritual timing, and complex metallurgical knowledge for creating ritual implements. Similar requirements appear in Celtic, Germanic, and Italic traditions, suggesting that these ceremonies served as educational systems that maintained technical knowledge across generations. The agricultural revolution that transformed human civilization between 10,000 and 5000 BCE wasn't merely a matter of domesticating plants and animals. It required sophisticated understanding of seasonal cycles, soil chemistry, weather patterns, and plant genetics that needed to be preserved and transmitted across generations. Indo-European cultures developed elaborate seasonal festival cycles that embedded this crucial knowledge within memorable ritual celebrations. Traditional seasonal festivals weren't just celebrations. They were educational systems that taught farming communities when to plant, how to select seeds, what weather patterns to expect, and how to manage soil fertility. The ritual context made this information memorable and ensured its accurate transmission. Are the four major festivals of the Celtic calendar: Samhain, Imbolc, Beltane, and Lughnasadh correspond precisely to critical points in the agricultural cycle: harvest completion, lambing season, planting time, and grain harvest. Each festival involved specific ritual activities that reinforced practical knowledge. Samhain ceremonies included divination practices that encoded weather prediction techniques. Imbolc rituals involved blessing ceremonies that maintained livestock breeding knowledge. Beltane celebrations included fire ceremonies that corresponded to optimal planting conditions. Similar patterns appear throughout Indo-European cultures: Germanic seasonal festivals, Roman agricultural ceremonies, and Vedic seasonal rituals all show consistent timing and content that suggests common origins in prehistoric farming communities. The ritual requirements of these festivals, specific foods, ceremonial implements, and seasonal timing, preserved detailed knowledge about crop selection, food preservation, and resource management. Archaeological evidence from Neolithic European sites reveals sophisticated agricultural knowledge that could only have been maintained through systematic cultural transmission. Sites like Catalhoyuk in Turkey and Starivo-Kris culture settlements in the Balkans show evidence of selective breeding, crop rotation, and soil management techniques that require generations of accumulated experience to develop and maintain. The ritual context provided crucial advantages for knowledge preservation. Unlike written instructions, which could be lost or damaged, ritual knowledge was distributed among entire communities and reinforced through annual repetition. The emotional significance of seasonal celebrations ensured that agricultural information remained psychologically salient and culturally valued across generations. Most significantly, these ritual systems provided mechanisms for innovation and adaptation. As Indo-European populations migrated to new environments, they could modify ritual practices to accommodate different climates, soils, and growing seasons while maintaining the underlying knowledge framework that made successful agriculture possible. This flexibility allowed Indo-European agricultural systems to spread successfully across diverse ecological zones. The rituals that shaped human history continue to influence contemporary culture in ways both obvious and subtle. Modern democratic institutions echo the accountability mechanisms developed in Mesopotamian divine kingship ceremonies. Scientific education employs the progressive revelation techniques pioneered in ancient mystery schools. Medical education preserves the hands-on learning methods perfected by Egyptian embalmers. Agricultural extension services use community celebration models derived from Indo-European seasonal festivals. Contemporary neuroscience is revealing why these ancient practices proved so historically effective. Ritual participation activates multiple memory systems simultaneously, creating robust information storage that survives individual death and cultural disruption. The emotional significance of ceremonial contexts enhances memory consolidation, while repeated performance strengthens neural pathways that preserve cultural knowledge. Ancient peoples understood intuitively what modern cognitive science is now proving empirically: that meaningful information is best preserved through embodied, emotional, and socially shared experiences. Ritual practices created optimal conditions for cultural learning and knowledge transmission. Modern technology is revealing details about ancient rituals that were invisible to previous generations of researchers. Ground-penetrating radar is mapping underground chambers in Egyptian temples. Chemical analysis is identifying psychoactive compounds in Maya ceremonial vessels. Acoustic modeling is reconstructing the sound environments of Greek mystery halls. Computer simulations are testing hypotheses about astronomical alignments in Celtic stone circles. These discoveries are transforming our understanding of ancient cultures, from primitive societies obsessed with supernatural beliefs to sophisticated civilizations that used ritual frameworks to preserve and transmit advanced knowledge. The ceremonies that seemed irrational to earlier scholars now appear as ingenious solutions to fundamental challenges of cultural continuity and social organization as we face contemporary challenges of information overload, cultural fragmentation, and environmental crisis. The wisdom embedded in ancient ritual traditions offers valuable insights for modern solutions. Indigenous communities worldwide maintain ceremonial practices that preserve ecological knowledge, conflict resolution techniques, and community organization methods that could inform contemporary sustainability efforts. Digital technology is creating new opportunities for ritual preservation and transmission. Virtual reality systems can recreate ancient ceremonial spaces, allowing researchers to experience ritual environments that have been destroyed or remain inaccessible. Artificial intelligence can analyze patterns in ritual behavior that might reveal organizational principles invisible to human observers. Global communication networks enable indigenous communities to share ceremonial knowledge while maintaining appropriate cultural protocols. The study of ancient rituals also offers perspectives on human nature that remain relevant for contemporary society. These practices reveal that humans are fundamentally social beings who require shared meaning, collective identity, and cultural continuity for psychological well-being. The elaborate ceremonies developed by our ancestors address needs that persist in modern populations, suggesting that ritual participation remains essential for human flourishing. Perhaps most importantly, investigating the rituals of lost civilizations reminds us that human cultures are far more creative, adaptable, and sophisticated than we often recognize. The people who developed these ceremonial traditions faced challenges similar to our own: climate change, political instability, technological disruption, and cultural transformation. Their responses, encoded in ritual practices that preserved valuable knowledge across generations, offer inspiration and guidance for addressing contemporary problems. The hidden legacy of ancient rituals continues to unfold as new discoveries reveal the remarkable ingenuity of our ancestors. These weren't primitive peoples controlled by superstitious beliefs. They were innovative cultures that understood the fundamental importance of ceremony in creating meaning, preserving knowledge, and building sustainable societies. Their rituals changed history not through supernatural intervention, but through sophisticated understanding of human psychology, social organization, and cultural transmission. The sacred fires that burned in ancient temples, the mystery initiations that transformed individual consciousness, and the seasonal festivals that preserved agricultural knowledge created the foundations upon which our contemporary world was built. As we continue to decode the messages embedded in these ancient practices, we discover not only what our ancestors believed, but what they knew and what they understood about the eternal human need to create meaning through shared ceremony. In learning to read the ritual languages of lost civilizations, we gain insight into the deepest patterns of human culture and the enduring power of ceremony to transform both individual consciousness and historical destiny. The quest to understand these transformative practices continues in laboratories, libraries, and field sites around the world, as researchers work to decode the final secrets of rituals that changed the course of human history. Each discovery brings us closer to understanding the profound wisdom embedded in ceremonies that our ancestors created to ensure that knowledge, meaning, and hope would survive across the generations that separate their ancient world from our modern one. The rituals that shaped our past continue to inform our future, carrying forward the eternal human impulse to create meaning through ceremony and preserve wisdom through sacred practice.